which are pretty vulnerable, right? Like being abandoned by my parents, being
Yeah.
incarcerated for 25 years. And I started thinking about identities, and I felt shame right now. Like I felt shame thinking about like who I was in the past. And but this is what the quote is, right? Like owning my story and loving
Yeah.
myself through this. And so
Yes.
this is a beautiful conversation. Is these things are some uh really, really um meaningful questions. And so who I am today, um, I'm a leader who loves. I'm a parent. I'm a
Hmm.
father of two beautiful little girls. I'm a partner. I'm a student.
Hmm.
I'm an executive.
Hmm.
Something that I never would have imagined in the past. And I'm a healer.
Hmm.
I love doing like direct service work with folks. I love holding circle. I'm an advocate. I advocate for myself and others, especially the incarcerated community. And yeah, like that's, I don't need those things to be able to like work through challenges today. And I love myself enough to know that, um, if people aren't gonna like me, I'm gonna be okay.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna be okay. Like it's pretty hard not
Yeah.
to, but I'm gonna
It'll
be
be fine.
okay.
All right. So, welcome to this week's episode of Leadership Soundbites with Michelle, my super special guest, who I have to thank Charles. Well, I have to thank you, Israel, because you actually reached out. But Charles posted. So, Charles and I went to a coaching program together at UC Davis, but posted work that he was doing with inmates. And that he was helping with leadership development, the development opportunities. I'm like, how do I get involved in this? And then Israel, you reached out because you're directly involved in it. So you are Israel Garcia, Executive Director of Defy Ventures in Northern California. And you are doing that work around helping inmates and providing development and opportunities for them to step into stuff of what it looks like beyond the life of being incarcerated. And so I know, sir, that you have a quote to kick us off with, and then we'll unpack some of that stuff. So welcome to the conversation, Israel.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate it. And I'm a little nervous, but really looking forward to this conversation for sure.
Good, thank you. I'm not nervous. So what's your quote?
So my quote is from Brene Brown, and it's owning our story and loving ourselves through that process is the bravest thing we'll ever do.
What does that mean to you, sir? Why that quote?
Um, yeah, sure. So I have a tremendous amount of experience in leadership. Um, and unfortunately, it started in a place from um, these really harmful beliefs and ideas and leadership through fear. And it took me a long time to realize that that wasn't who I am. That wasn't like genuine leadership. That wasn't the person I wanted to be or the way I wanted others to be. And so being able to take the journey of what I experienced from early childhood through um, like being a young adult into like who I am today um, was challenging. And there were a lot of moments when I wanted to just, bury myself in shame, bury myself in, embarrassment and disappointment and frustration. And I had to own who I was, the thing that happened in a way that was like healing and in a process of like growth for me. And as I was able to do that, I was really able to like love myself in this really authentic way. And it showed up in how I interacted with the world and in my interpersonal relationships. And it continues to show up in my leadership styles. And yeah, so it means a great deal to me. And I don't necessarily like live it out word by word, but definitely the spirit of that is how I live my life.
It's interesting because I go back to our past does not define us.
Hmm.
Uh, in and a lot, and the word anchor comes to mind for me, right? Because a lot of times what happens is people literally drop anchor back in their past, and they don't move forward from that because they're so anchored in what it was. And the reality is we're all here to learn and grow. There's no way, if you look back now to the human you are today sitting in front of me, compared to the human that you were when you were 15, 16, 17, 18, right? A kid. The human that you were back then couldn't do what you're doing today because there was all this learning, all this growing, all this evolution, all this stuff that we had to learn. And a lot of times what happens is we don't give ourselves credit for that and acknowledge it because we're so anchored in who we were back then or mistakes that we made. We all make them. Everyone does. It's what you do with it after it happens.
Yeah, he's gonna hopefully he'll appreciate this. I'm gonna share this when it winds up airing. I have a great person in my life. His name is Jesse Cecina, who helped me through a lot of my own personal growth and transformation. And he named these anchors as like these pivotal moments in our lives.
Mm,
And oftentimes there's one that leads us into this trajectory of for me personally. So a little personal history as well is I was incarcerated for 25 years. A lot of the leadership that I talked about earlier on in my life was stemmed from early childhood into like a large part of my incarceration. And I take that level of responsibility like a little bit further and think about I wasn't just making mistakes, I was making like harmful decisions. And so
mhm,
like to me like that's really important to be able to have that level of accountability for myself. But in that time of incarceration, we talk about these pivotal moments, these anchors where early on in our lives something happens to us and it could potentially lead us in a completely different trajectory of where we started at, and so we start making harmful decisions. And I was that's what happened to me. Like I was abandoned by my parents, and lived in an abusive household for a long time and thought that I didn't matter, I wasn't deserving, and I used that as the guide of how I lived my life. I didn't think the world cared about me, and so I developed this belief that I wasn't going to care about the world. Um, and so Jesse also really did this journey alongside us, specifically, to also identify this pivotal moment where, or this anchor where we decided to do things differently and turn things back into a trajectory of doing good and positive. And so, and it could be one, it could be multiple. And for me, it was a series of events that happened before I was able to really like more deeply anchor myself into like who I am today. But you're absolutely right in the sense that, I wouldn't be here today if I didn't change my life, if I didn't find that other pivotal moment. I'd more than likely still be incarcerated. I'd
mhm,
more than likely still be making a lot of harmful decisions. Um, and thankfully, because of like those moments, I've been able to change and um, help others change. And so
mhm,
you mentioned like my role in the organization I work for. And that's exactly what we do. Like we help individuals find like their own potential. Like we take the journey alongside them through personal development. We anchor it in entrepreneurship. But really it's about them being able to identify their like genuine, true leaders that they are. The prison system in California is just mass incarceration is a term that's prevalent for a reason. And it's filled with tremendous leaders. And so
mhm.
that's my background and where I came from. And if I hadn't healed and grown to be able to be who I am today, who knows where I would be. So the idea of anchors and like having these moments in our lives are really important to identify because it helps me like think
Mhm.
about how I'm gonna love every single part of who I was and who I am today. And it doesn't mean I'm okay with it or that I approved of it, but I can still love myself in a way that accepts all those things.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. Thank you for sharing. And it's not just the prison system in the state of California.
For sure.
It's
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
it's I think I'm going to be bold and say, I think it's all prison systems, because what we have are people that, to your point, with your story, which I hadn't heard before on, your kid, your parents abandoning you. I mean, self-worth. So you're looking around and going, okay, so this is the hand I got dealt. I'm not, so why should I care about anybody else? Right. But you, Israel, sitting in front of me, you care deeply. So it's got to be interesting when I hear that Jesse made this impact on you. What did it feel like to be in your body as you started living life with love for yourself and for other humans, that before it was like, I'm going to hurt before I'm hurt?
Mm.
What did that shift feel like for you?
That's it's a great question. That's a great question, and for a number of reasons. I was thinking like last night about today in this conversation, and one of the things you hear often is how people aren't necessarily like in tune with themselves. They're, engrossed in the idea of like social media and who they want to present as. Um, and so like what does like, real authenticity look like? And even during my incarceration, when I wasn't even around social media, the idea of the image was monumental, like in to who I was as a person. And so what was the most challenging for me early on in that transformation and like identifying that pivotal moment was for almost 20 years who I was attached to these behaviors and these decisions I was making. And thinking about what I was going to be was scary. Like it was
Mhm,
genuinely frightening to think that like, people weren't going to like me because I wasn't going to be the person that I was in the past, and I wasn't going to have the things that I had in the past. And like I was married for a long time. I still am.
mhm,
Amazing person. And like I was afraid I was going to lose her. Like she was going to see me for who I was without the facade of, you
mhm,
know, this other person and all that came with that other person. And I was deathly afraid, and it took me a long time to work through that. I literally had to live in that and walk through it in order to see on the other side that
mhm.
I really didn't change. Like I changed my behaviors for sure, but inherently that caring person was still in there. Like that
Yeah.
loving person was still in there. And I just allowed him to like, be him and to be seen by the world. Um, and so that's a reason why that's a really great question and a really great like thing to highlight for folks who are on these journeys, whether they're incarcerated or not. Like being able to like switch gears and think about leadership in a different way can mean changing image and what that's going to look like. It can be incredibly scary,
Mhm,
but believing in yourself is really where like the core of that is at, though.
mhm. It's interesting. I'm listening to you, and the stuff that comes to mind for me is around, and I had a conversation with a client earlier around identity.
Mm,
And it's these transitions that we go through in life, right? And so your point, it's like it can be incarceration, it can be changing jobs, it can be, I'm a student and I'm going to start my career. I've had a career and now I'm going to retire. I've been in this role in a corporate world and now I'm going to go into self-employment. All these things require identity shifts, right? And so what was an identity shift for you, Israel? Because that had to have taken place, right? In order for you to go from, and the visual that I had is literally you're just, the walls are up, right? I've got all this feeling of the loving, caring Israel, but no one's really going to see it who I am, because then I'm going to be exposed and vulnerable, right? And I've got to be the tough guy. I've got to be the guy that's got all the stuff together. When the reality is, I'm this hurt and wounded kid that was thrown aside with the trash, and but I have all this love to give. So the identity of this tough guy, whatever your identity was, I don't want to presuppose it, But what was the shift that had to take place? And who are you? What is that identity now, if you were to articulate it?
Yeah. I even as I shared some of the things before, which are pretty vulnerable, right? Like being abandoned by my parents, being
Yeah.
incarcerated for 25 years. And I started thinking about identities, and I felt shame right now. Like I felt shame thinking about like who I was in the past. And but this is what the quote is, right? Like owning my story and loving
Yeah.
myself through this. And so
Yes.
this is a beautiful conversation. Um and so I think about like my identity and who I was in the past, and like who I am today, and like what necessarily shifted. And um I was a violent person. Like I was a
Mhm.
gang leader. Sold drugs. I used drugs. Um, I used drugs like personally. I used drugs as like a tool to
Mhm.
like foster relationships with people, and um, like those things are the things that shifted. Like I didn't need to heal or to like cope with these other mechanisms. Like I learned how to like heal and cope in a really healthy way. And
Mhm.
so like that's really like who I am today, is being able to identify um when I'm who I am today is these things are some really really um meaningful questions. And so who I am today, um I'm a leader who loves. I'm a parent. I'm a
Mhm.
father of two beautiful little girls. I'm a partner. I'm a student.
Mhm.
I'm an executive.
Mhm.
Something that, I never would have imagined in the past. And I'm a healer.
Mhm.
I love doing like direct service work with folks. I love holding circle. I'm an advocate. I advocate for myself and others, especially the incarcerated community. And yeah, like that's, I don't need those things to be able to like work through challenges today. And I love myself enough to know that, um, if people aren't gonna like me, I'm gonna be okay.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna be okay. Like it's pretty hard not
Yeah.
to, but I'm gonna be okay.
Well, I don't think all of us are everyone's cup of tea, right?
Absolutely not. Yeah,
And
yeah. I
and
say that in
that's
jest.
okay. I mean, the people that you're going to connect with are your people.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely. For
they're
sure.
your people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think that's part of the thing is it's a crazy expectation to think that we're going to have everyone like us.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to agree. No, as long as we're truly coming from this positive intent place to want to make a difference, serve our purpose, whatever it may be, right? And for you, I think that shifted at some point in your life, right? Because early on, where that violence is like you're angry, you
Hmm.
know, F you world, this is what you did to me. I'm gonna just do it back, right? It's a
Yeah.
survival. And it's a pretty freaking powerful journey to go through what you went through. And I want to switch something for you, if you don't mind,
Sure.
is that what I heard you say is saying it now and thinking back, it's a little embarrassing.
Hmm.
Can you just take pride in the fact that you navigated the journey that you went through? We can't undo mistakes that we made, choices that we make in the past. We can't undo them. We can make the decision to draw the line in the sand to say from this point forward, that's not me today. But I'm going to tell you 100%, Israel, if you hadn't gone through what you went through, you wouldn't be able to connect with the people that you're connecting with at the level that you're connecting with them. I'm assuming Jesse, who had such an impact on you, walked a minute or two in the same shoes or the same path that you walked. So it's the relatability, it's the credibility, right? So it's like when I'm coaching someone just starting into leadership, or like a college student to a senior leader, there's a relatability there, there's a connection there. And then when people feel that, we're able to help them at a different level because they let their guard down. They can be who they really are.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate that like follow through of that thought, and being able to name that, because that is really important. It's really important to me. It's really important to like the people that I try to serve, is that like it's okay to have, and this is probably a message for me as well in real time. Like it's okay for me to have that feeling of embarrassment, um, but to be able to like name it and walk through it and name the other side of that, of pride, of
Hmm.
grace, of compassion,
Hmm.
is also important. And so I definitely am proud of myself. Like I'm proud of
Hmm.
myself for a number of different reasons, um, but that being one of them for sure. And I know that, it's not necessarily, it's not about trying to change like my past, but it's about
Hmm.
changing the way that I look at it and use it as a platform to be able to do the things that I do today as powerfully and effectively as I possibly can. Because you're absolutely right. Jesse did have a very similar
Hmm.
background as I did.
Had a
Most of the
feeling.
people who are incarcerated have very similar backgrounds. Um, I just shared not too long ago like some of the statistics around like my own life, and like being born a person of color, being born into poverty, being born the child of an undocumented parent,
Hmm.
starting to use substances and alcohol at the age of 12. Like every statistic would have told you, yeah, this person's going to end up dead or in prison,
Hmm.
before they turn 21. And that's exactly what
Yeah.
happened. And but my background isn't any different from the thousands of people who are incarcerated. And so the circumstances may look different. Jesse's, environment may have looked a little bit different, but the fundamentals were like absolutely the same. The same systemic barriers were there. The same cycles of trauma were there. The same lack of opportunities were there. And so that's absolutely true, like what you're naming. And so I appreciate, and I am grateful, really, really grateful for that follow through of that share right now.
Hmm. Um, it's it's funny because I have a feeling that if people saw you on the street, nobody would ever imagine what your background is and where you were and the life that you lived and everything else, right? And it's an interesting thing because that's the case with most of us humans.
Mm,
People don't know the rest of the story. And there's certain times that it's appropriate to share it, for people to understand so that we can blow up these misconceptions that we as humans may have about other humans. It's like with clients that I get in the room with, and like I shared with you, this is a judgment-free zone, always. I'm not going to judge people, what they say, what they're thinking, anything else. There's no value in it, number one.
right.
And if I'm judging someone, I'm not able to actually authentically help.
Mm. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And as human beings, um, it's hard not to. Like we have a tendency to want to categorize things. It's just sort of how we like, naturally operate. And so, society culture has, made it even more complex to place these like value judgments on top of those categories. And so being able to like walk into a room and like not do that instinctually is really challenging. I think what becomes beneficial is being able to be really conscious of it and
Mm.
say, like, in real time, have that inner dialogue and saying, I don't need to do this right now. Like, let me see this person for like who they are.
Hmm.
And it takes practice before that ultimately becomes sort of like a natural tendency, to just walk into a room without any expectations, without
Hmm.
any, preconceived judgments, based off of, a visual,
Hmm.
and to be able to like just sit and listen and be present with somebody, and hear them for who they are, and understand them for who they are, and see them for who they are, and help them the way they want to be helped. Like people
Hmm.
are the best. they know themselves better than anybody. And
Mm-hmm.
so, one of the things that was beautiful about not just Jesse, but a number of people in my life where was that they would they would take this journey and they would help with these lessons and these learnings around like pivotal moments and all these other pieces that help me become who I am. And then they would, but it wouldn't say like, this was my story, so this has to be your story. They would say, here's my story. Like, does it sound similar? Here's a like here's yeah, it's this idea of a pivotal moment. Like, could you think of when that happened in your life? And so being able to do that allows for somebody to really tap into their own potential and like their own leadership and their own person so
Mm-hmm.
that that's who ultimately shines. I learned this lesson a long time ago that was if I take credit for their successes, I have to take credit for their failures.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to do either. Like it's their successes, like it's their stuff. I'll support them absolutely 100%. Um, but and the opposite is true in that like if people start giving credit for their successes to others, then you also become an excuse for any missteps that they take. And so
Mm-hmm.
being able to build up the autonomy and the empowerment of folks is that's how you do it, is seeing them for them.
It's interesting. What came to mind for me is it's this whole idea that um own your stuff, right? So it's like if I'm going to own the good, I'm going to own the stuff that I went through to get here, right? Because we always do. It's like there's some quote on the thing. It's like failure is on the path to success. You can't get there without the other. So, it's like you've got to try, you've got to fail, you've got to learn, you got to grow. And I think the place that you were talking about with judgment, this is my sense. I'm not saying with absolute certainty. I think what happens a lot of times is when people start judging is because there's some level of fear that they have around something. Like maybe I'm in over my head. Maybe I don't know what's going on here. Maybe I'm uncomfortable around the situation because I've never been. It's like I've never been incarcerated. Okay.
Mm,
I've never been a Black female. I've never been any of these things. However, I can learn from people who have, and I can help people who have. And I'm going to cry in a minute. I just know it.
mm.
um, I hate it when this happens. So my son, and I share this with you, uh, is incarcerated. Just breathe. Here we go. We're going to get through this.
You got this.
Thanks. So I watched him make really stupid choices. Really stupid choices. So he wasn't on the end that you were in, that his parents abandoned him or any of that stuff. None of that stuff happened. And so inmates where he's at would look around and go, what's your story? I mean, I've seen your mom, I've seen your sister. What happened? And he's in the same place. And it comes back to like you were, Israel, it's this feeling of worthiness, is that whatever level he didn't feel worthy and made some really stupid choices. And it's hard as someone on the outside loving someone who's making those choices. That being said, not every inmate gets the pleasure of having a mom who does executive coaching and leadership development.
Mm,
Because of who I am and who he is and who I am with, I don't judge. The moment you step in and you go, you know what? That was then, this is now. I'm going to own it because that's my big thing. Own it, whatever it is. And then I'm here to help you work through it. I'm here. I'm not going to judge. I'm not going to, and there are parents out there that go, no, you're the black sheep. You've done this. And the relationship is severed.
mm,
That's not me. So when he owned it, I owned it with him. So I'm going to be right there with you. And so books got sent. Love yourself like your life depends on it. Happiness Advantage. Um, uh, God, a gazillion books and lessons and coaching things. And so he's gotten to the point now where he's got a long time to go. And hopefully that gets truncated and shortened up and everything. But in the meantime, and this is why I tell people with such conviction, I can know everything about your external environment, everything. And I can only predict 10% of your future happiness.
Mm.
It doesn't matter where you are or what the circumstances are. You have the choice to be happy and make the best of it. And he's living proof of that. And Israel, my gut is when you were incarcerated, you were living proof of it as well. Is that you made the choice at some point to go, you know what? This isn't going to define me. I'm going to step in. I'm going to be the best. I'm going to pay it forward. I'm going to help people get out. If he's in, as a cellmate, someone who's short to the door and going to get released, and they don't have a plan, they're going to have a plan before they leave because of who they're in the room with.
For
He's
sure.
like, he's like, no plan is a plan to fail. You're going to be right back in here again. Is that really what you want?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is we can all we can all help people at any number of points. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be, do you have to wait till some other point? Jesse did that for you as others. My son's doing it for people that with him. And I want to be able to continue. And that's why I reached out to you. It's like, or you reached out to me, I reached out to Charles and says, how can we start doing this so people see a light at the end of the tunnel? And it's actually hope.
Thank you for your vulnerability. I really want to like acknowledge and uplift you for like your courage right now, um, and naming the challenges and the pain that you're experiencing with your child. Your child, like that's your child who is, having to endure incarceration. And so, um, really amazing, really amazing what you just did. Um, and I'm sorry that he's experiencing that. We talked about mass incarceration early on, and I'm a huge proponent for restorative justice practices, and I would love to see that take place in our culture. I'm not completely
Can you say
cynical.
more about what that is? Can you say more about what that
Yeah,
is?
it's so our criminal justice system in America is punitive, and restorative justice is based off like restorative factors, and it's bringing people to the table, all stakeholders from the person who committed the harm to the person who was harmed, and inclusive of like the community because they're not negated from the harm, especially today with like media and social media.
Mm-hmm.
And so bringing everybody to the table and working through it in a way that is um, based off of healing and not necessarily like punishment. It's allowing everybody to have a voice at that table, which doesn't happen. Community members aren't brought into court. People are represented by a district attorney and an attorney. And so it's really being able to have like an experience that is based off of healing, and understanding how is caused, to be able to have preventative measures that aren't
Mm-hmm.
just this happened, so we're gonna, punish you in this specific way. Um, and so I think that, in my case and in your son's case, that definitely could have, and in the cases of everybody that can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'm sorry that he's having to endure that. Um, and I think that being able to help people, well, I'll name something specific that you talked about, which
Yeah.
was like being that example in that environment. And it took me a long time to realize in most homes in the kitchen, there's usually a sign or like a pictured frame that says home is where the heart is.
Yeah.
And, I was in a group one time and I just started to realize that people in prison often directly refrain from referring to the cell as home. And
Mm.
they think that if I use that terminology, which has a lot of truth in it, that I become
Mm-hmm.
institutionalized and I accepted my circumstances and I'm okay with this. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was not okay with it, but I also recognized that pushing against something so much didn't really allow me to like accept the other things and allow
Mm-hmm.
like myself to be opened up. And so I
Mm-hmm.
said, this isn't home. Prison isn't home. but it's definitely where I want my heart to be connected with me all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
so that shows. That shows up in like your son and how he helps people, not
Mm-hmm.
want to come back to prison. That shows up with
Mm-hmm.
Jesse and how he helps people not want to come back to prison. Because then it shows in the things that we do, because then people come home
Mm-hmm.
and they become these really, really meaningful, positive contributors to themselves, to their
Mm-hmm.
families, to their neighborhoods, to their communities, to
Mm-hmm.
society. And so America's recidivism rate is incredibly ridiculous,
Mm-hmm.
and it's depending on the origin of the report, depending on like the length of recidivism, it's just higher than it should be.
Mm-hmm.
There shouldn't be any recidivism, like period, but being able to have a recidivism rate, being able to not have people go back to prison is really what we
Mm-hmm.
want. Like, because if
Mm-hmm.
somebody goes back to prison, the other end of that is that somebody was harmed. And so being able to be these positive forces like in our communities, wherever they're at,
Mm-hmm.
incarceration or in neighborhoods, um, allows us to reduce that. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's not, I'm gonna do a shout out real quick. I see a segue, or I see an opportunity. And so it's easy for me to say, and it may be easy for others to say, here's this person who was directly impacted by incarceration, changed his life, and gives back in this way. And and that's absolutely true. And it's not the end all either. Like, part of the
Mm-mm.
work that we do at Defy is being able to have a volunteer base, being able to bring people into the spaces that we
Mm-hmm.
go, to be able to transform, to help people transform their own lives. Because
Mm-hmm.
without them, like, I don't know that I would have done it. I was a what we call, our program participants are called entrepreneurs in training, or EITs. I was an EIT. In 2017, I went through the program, and I had an event, I had two events, one midway and one at the end of the program, where a group of volunteers came from the business world, like executives, people
Yep.
who were privileged, they had no necessity of coming in,
Yeah,
but
they
did
didn't
it
have
of their
to.
own. They
Yeah.
didn't have to, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
they chose to, and they came in and they came into a space and they saw me for me. They believed in me, and that helped me believe in like myself.
Yep.
And that's the work that we do. And so I'm shout out, call in to everybody that's out there and wants to get involved in this work. It's incredibly meaningful. And as most altruistic work is, it winds up being mutually beneficial. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
rewarding in so many ways. And so, um, sorry for doing the plug, but I saw that
No, but
opportunity to
you
say.
don't ever freaking apologize for that. And the thing is, put all the contact information in the description on YouTube, and we can share on LinkedIn that stuff too for people that want to get involved. Because and don't think for a minute that what could I do?
Mm,
What can't you do? I mean, oh my gosh.
absolutely.
So just know that to your point, Israel, is that you grew up without having people believe in you, right? You created this facade around you to as a shield, for whatever reason. And to have somebody else, a stranger, if you will, have faith in you, give you hope, it's like that's that extra motivation to keep going. And it doesn't take anything for us to provide that for somebody else. And it's not blowing smoke, it's legit.
Hmm.
When I hear what people are doing, when I hear the believability and conviction in their voice, and the hope and the desire to give back and make a difference, because that's what I'm hearing in a lot of these guys. It's powerful.
Here it is. Like,
Yeah.
it's right literally in front of you.
Yes.
And
Yes.
like, I came home and I'm not an entrepreneur, like I don't have my own business, but we also have a term that we use that's called an intrapreneur, and it's
Yes.
essentially allowing that entrepreneurial spirit to shine even in an organization that already exists. And so the creativity, the potential, the leadership, like all of those wonderful things exist in folks in this untapped like potential
Hmm.
pool that is incarceration. And so being able to connect with them, there's plenty of opportunities to do that, um, throughout California. I'm based in Northern California, but throughout California,
Hmm.
and so there's absolutely endless potential to contribute and to be a part of this movement towards
Mm-hmm.
bringing humanity back to the most marginalized, some of the most marginalized populations for sure.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally agree. And I would add, because I part of it with leadership, right? Because you talked about that in the beginning. It's not just within the community that's incarcerated. This is within people within organizations, because all the stuff that you just talked about, the
Yeah.
entrepreneurship, my brain is like, it's accountability, it's stepping in and running the business like it's your own. It's all the stuff, right? And a lot of times we tend to go for, well, we need to work on employee engagement and get everybody, we need to work on accountability, right? Because you're accountable. When you're accountable, you're freaking engaged. You don't have
Yeah.
someone that has to go, Israel, get going, go do it. You're like, catch me. I mean,
Yeah.
like, fuck. So that's the stuff. I think it's the, regardless of where we're at, it's stepping in to create that sense of ownership and accountability within people. And we do it by respectfully tapping into, what are your thoughts and ideas? What do you want to do? What motivates you? And I think a lot of times there was some point along the line, we forgot that.
Yeah, we did for sure. And you hear that a lot. It's not necessarily like manifested though in the workplace. And um when it's modeled from so I started entry level. Like when I first came home, I was like, whatever I can do to make an honest dollar, I'm
Yes,
gonna do
yes.
it. And so I started it, and within less than 90 days, like I moved to a supervisory position because like I did just that. Like I lived out that accountability and people
Yep.
saw it and were like, they recognized it and were like, you're leading, maybe not by
Mhm.
title, but you're leading. And so like let's put a title and help, that transform into something different and be a lead through modeling. And
Mhm.
so you're absolutely right in naming that and being able to have people come into a workforce and within an organization and be that model, even if it's at an entry level point.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. I could chat with you for a long freaking time, sir. I love the story. I 100% invite you to come back. I've enjoyed this time. I'm curious, what's one or two things that you want people to walk away with based on our chat from today?
Um, well, what's really sticking with me right now is what you highlighted and uplifted and the accountability and like for folks to be able to like recognize what accountability means for them and how they can live that out in their lives. In their partnerships, in their whether they're parents, with their children, in their work, um, they're leading, whether they want to or
Mhm.
not. And the other part is really loving yourself and
Mhm.
following that through. Like what I cannot let go of was like your love and your compassion and saying, it doesn't just end with feeling the embarrassment and the shame of who you were. It's also being prideful of who you are today and how you
Mhm.
transform that. And so, um, yeah, that's that's really meaningful for me, and I'm grateful for that, and encourage others to um, love themselves like in that way, all the way through,
Mhm.
all the way through.
Mhm. Yeah, warts and all. Warts
Warts,
and all.
warts, and all. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I agree, and I think one of the other things, because I've noticed that we tend to as humans tell ourselves stories about different things. Part of it could
Hmm.
be is I made these bad choices, and it can never be any different than this path that I'm on. Lie, just lie.
Hmm.
The other is when we get to a certain age, right? Because my kids are 40 and 43. So they're not in their teens, right? I've got, grandchildren from the age of 5 to 22. And so I'm in this space now where I'm hearing people talk about, well, I'm too old to do fill in the blank. And I think it's the same kind of dialogue and narrative that we tell ourselves that limits us from our full potential. And by the way, I'm not going to leave anything on the table. Okay. Well, I'm going to all out full potential. I mean, learning and growing until I tell people I'm 6 feet under or an urn on someone's mantle. All right. Don't limit yourself by these stories or beliefs because you're holding back you from everything that you can do for others. So stop it. So if you're doing it and it feels bad and it feels yucky, it's a lie. Shift the story. We have so much more to give. There's not and do and experience and live and be. Don't
Yeah.
let what happened yesterday or this negative dialogue or age or disability or ability or whatever it is, flip it. Because I have people go, I'm bad at this. You're not bad at that. Have you ever actually applied yourself at doing that? Probably not. So it's all this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So
we have a whole chapter on self-limiting beliefs and self-freeing beliefs.
there you go.
Um, Absolutely agree with that. And what we tell ourselves are the most important words we're going to hear. It's not from
Yes,
anybody else, it's from
yes,
ourselves.
yes. Anyone who knows me, words matter, and the most important words are the ones we say to ourselves. Yes, it's
Absolutely.
yes, 100% agree. So I will sign up. I'm look forward to helping with the work that you do. And if there's another way I can help, frickin' please let me know.
Absolutely. And special
Yeah.
shout out to Charles. You mentioned him at the beginning. I want
Yes,
to, and
yes,
I
yes,
keep thinking about him. I keep forgetting, but I want to now. Thank you, Charles.
yeah. We'll
Michelle's
tag him.
awesome. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I'll definitely tag him on the post. Thank you again. This has been Leadership Soundbites. Please like, share, subscribe. Michele and Israel. Until next time, have a frickin' awesome day. Thank you.
Thank you.